Salut, welcome back. I hope our time away was wonderful and beautiful and kind, like all the things you can find in a Moana movie, which ends up being quite in line with our love for today, which is Philia, um, which is the love through friendship. Make sure that if you've not already watched the video, watch what C.S. Lewis has to say about it, about philia and what it show and how it shows up. And my question to you all is, what is it? What is philia? I said friendship, but let's give more. Um, how does one get philia, and how does one engage in it? Is it a thing that needs to be cultivated? Is it a thing that one just feels and does? So how does one engage with it? And what are its characteristics? What's the difference between philia and yesterday's love of Storge? Now, moving into our pieces, our reading pieces. I am so happy to have shared with you all Etta Mae Johnson by Gloria Naylor. A little bit about Gloria Naylor. She won the National Book Award for the book that Etta Mae Johnson is actually in. It's a novel. It's a novel in stories called The Women of Brewster. I actually have it right here. The Women of Brewster Place. It is an extraordinary novel. So very good. And it makes me so very happy. And this story in particular makes me happy because I think it is a happy story. Some things, subvert expectations, obviously, in this story, but rarely, not rarely, in literary fiction, uh, what ends up happening for so many writers is that sadness and turmoil and suffering equals intellectual rigor. And I'm so thankful for women, Black women in particular, for showing me through their work that one can be joyous. And even in the midst of turmoil, one can find joy, and it can still have intellectual rigor, and and have complexity and depth, and we have a happy ending. Or it's just sweet and nice and kind, and one doesn't have to be thrown to the wolves to have to contemplate life. One can fall into a lover's arms and still contemplate life. And then we get to figure out what is lover, who is lover, how is lover defined. Um, but yeah, so many of these things make me happy. And one of the lines that really struck me in the piece was on page 69, where we get down to the bottom, where it says, "I lay down with this body and get up with it every morning. And each morning it cries for just a little more rest than it did the day before." I think I think what people think is that people write depth and with the intentions of being deep. But I think once the more corporeal that we are, the more interested in the body and how specific peculiarities maneuver through the world. I think that's where we find depth. And so we have this one thing that this character says, just talking about the very specific experience about looking in the mirror, getting older. It's just like, I lay down with this body. I get up with this body. No one knows this body more than I do. And from there, one can extrapolate so many things about the life of the body, the time, and we're confronted with people's bodies and how they exist outside of our survey. Uh-oh. I don't know if you heard that. My cat, Raina. Okay, this is Raina. I'm going to show her once because she's probably not going to want it. This is, hello. Okay, she's over it. That's Raina. No, so like once these very very wonderful things about settling into oneself. That these are the things that have, like, I think, based on my sensibilities, like the most, that have so much depth and truth about the world, about life, about humanity, that give us these things. One of the things I also loved about this piece was the relationship that it invoked, or that it showed. And, just it showed friends being friends in this very happy way. And I thought about my friends, and, we begin the story with Etta Mae coming back to Brewster Place, and they just settle into each other. Right, and it's very indicative. If you might have friends that you just, when you see each other after a long time, you don't have to speak all the time. When you see each other a long time, it's just as if you never left. And so my question is, how does Naylor portray this familiarity? What devices does she use to show this familiar sense of settling between Maddie and Etta Mae? And so if we can figure out how Naylor did it, maybe we can use it in our work. Maybe we're interested in familiarity that might not have left and come back. Maybe we're trying to create friends that have never left each other for a very long time. If we can figure out how Naylor did it, maybe we can place it into our work. One of the things I also noticed about the piece, maybe you noticed about the piece, was that the lyrics that were dotted through. Jazz lyrics, blues lyrics. One of the very famous songs sang by Billie Holiday, "Strange Fruit," is throughout. So my question is, why do you think that Naylor did this particular thing? How does it serve the character of Etta Mae? How does it serve the narrative of this story of Etta Mae? Do you think it was just there? Did you not appreciate it? Did you think it added just the right thing and just the right moments of whatever profundity? So you let me know about these things, right? And yeah, I want to hear your thoughts about this story. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did it make you smile? Did it make you frown? Did it make you cry? How did it? Did you see complexity with the characters? Were you rooting for them? Weren't you? Were you not rooting for them? And then talk about how those things came about and how one can recreate similar effects in your own writing. Now, moving to Virginia is for Lovers. Now, this is a poem by Nicole Seeley from her collection Ordinary Beast. A little bit of information about Nicole Seeley. Nicole Seeley is an Afro-Latinx poet. I think she's from Florida. She was the executive director for a few years for Cave Canem. Cave Canem is essentially the preeminent poetry foundation for Black poetry. I think the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe the last 6 Black Pulitzer Prize winning poets have strong affiliations with Cave Canem, and many of the National Book Award winning poets also. So Cave Canem is an incredibly important organization within poetry, within Black poetry, but then in the larger context of all of poetry. And so that's just really, really cool. Anywho, to Virginia, Virginia is for Lovers. Now, you might have noticed throughout the poem that this poem is engaging with HIV. House in Virginia, HIV, right? And so I love that one of the things I love about the poem is how the speaker wanders through their own thoughts. So they're at a Pride event. Again, what's interesting is that they're at a Pride event and they're talking to their gay friend, and the friend is saying, "I just broke up with my partner and they gave me a house in Virginia," and it's interesting because instead of consoling the friend, right, the speaker descends into thoughts of self, and so the speaker thinks to themselves, oh, this is so cool. Let me picture myself. They said my friend and myself, but they censor themselves. They said, let me picture myself in this house, right? And then they maneuver through, and then they get to their thoughts just wander, and their thoughts wander into this Shawnee legend. But it's just it's indicative of the selfishness of humanity. And I say selfishness not as a pejorative. I'm attaching no moralisms to selfishness, but strictly as an understanding that humans will center themselves. We have a natural inclination to center ourselves and center our pain and our wants and our joys, and that's okay. The only thing we can do is reckon with it, as the speaker of this poem reckoned with at the end of the poem. Before we get to the end, I want to ask the question of, or I want to point out how we saw the speaker descend into the Shawnee legend. Why? Why do you think the speaker brought up this Shawnee legend in this particular poem? This is a poem about two gay men, the speaker's friend who's gay breaking up and getting HIV, and somehow we get to this pillaging of a village, right? What do you think? How do you think these things connect? What I want you to keep in mind, this is, as I said, pillaging of a village. Keep in mind that HIV is a virus. What do viruses do inside someone's body? What can you, if you've taken things like microbiology, or if you've taken biology, you understand what a virus at least base level is. What do viruses do? How can we make the connections between this friend who has HIV and this story of this legend of violence? It's clearly violence. And what I want to point out is this particular turn, right? So like we get the turn from the friend telling them they have HIV into, this legend. And the beautiful thing about poetry is that one doesn't have to explicitly say the connections, right? We make the connections because all one has to do as an artist is place two things next to each other that someone normally might not have. So if I put, a red apple with a Granny Smith apple, I think that's what it's called, the green one. Yeah, sure. If I put those two things next to each other, in your mind, you're automatically going to think to yourself, maybe you automatically think to yourself, these are two apples. I didn't say that. No one said that. I just picked up the apples, right? But then I put up an apple and an orange. Maybe one puts together and say, oh, both of these are fruit. I don't say anything about that. I just place them next to each other. And so in this particular poem, we have a friend who's been diagnosed with HIV, Shawnee thing. What is the thing that comes to your mind, right? That is the job of the reader. And I think as a writer, what's very intelligent, what we have to make sure that we do is place things in a way that affords the reader to extend themselves, right? How can you extend yourself? How can we get our readers to extend themselves? Now, bringing our attention to the end of the poem, again, I said at the beginning, we have a friend telling one person, telling the other friend this piece of information. Then we get the turn into the Shawnee legend. We get another turn, don't we? Right? So we're broken out from this daydream back into the present time. And the turn, it forces the speaker to decenter themselves, right? So it's, I'm thinking about myself in this house, then my mind goes to this particular legend that has seemingly nothing to do with my friend. It's a legend that I know, maybe the friend does not know. And then the friend said, hey, that's not what I'm talking about. Actually, I have HNV, HI. And then, boom, the speaker now has to decenter the self, right? And place it on the friend. What does it mean that the friend didn't immediately try to console, the speaker didn't immediately try to console the friend? If your friend told you broke up and you're like, oh, well, one time Sisyphus was trying to push a rock up it's just like, I just told you I broke up with somebody, and after a very long time. So, what's going on? But what does that mean? Does it mean that this person is a bad friend? Or, to be honest, I kind of reject the understandings of good and bad in its kind of in its usefulness to the world, but besides the point. What do these things tell us about humanity, about ourselves? We have a character, we have a speaker who's a character, and we have the friend who's a character. We have the ex-boyfriend who's a character. How do you feel about these things? And then we get this tenderness of the kissing of the hand, which I think is very, very beautiful. So, as I said last time, there are three types of poems. We have narrative, persona, and lyric. What do you think this kind of this poem is? Narrative, persona, or lyric? I'm going to tell you in about 5 seconds. What do you think it is? Bingo. If you guessed it, it is a narrative poem, right? So we begin at a particular point in time, at a particular place, right? At a pride event, and the character says something, the friend says something, and then we kind of move outside of time, right, into this daydream. Dreams are both temporal. When I say temporal, I mean regarding time, both temporal and non-temporal, right? Because they can kind of dreams can be a very long time and take up a short amount of time in real life. And then we are snapped back into the present time when the friend corrects our speaker about what that is, what house in Virginia means. So moving into our understanding of love, right? So today we watched the video on Philia. I asked the question like I did last time about Storge. In these two particular pieces, when Etta Mae Johnson and Virginia is for Lovers, what does love make us do? What does love give us? What's interesting is that in Virginia is for Lovers, the friend who we actually just get this one piece of information about, love gave them something. Their relationship with their ex-partner gave them something. What did it give them? How does our speaker feel about what was given to them? What does the speaker give their friend? And so moving away from that, asking the question of what does Philia afford our characters? We see in Etta Mae Johnson their relationship. What did Etta Mae give Maddie? What did Maddie afford Etta Mae? How is their relationship how show their own humanity? And how is the complexity of the human experience shown through these Philia relationships, right? Again, I said one of the things people often think that we're going to talk about eros, erotic love, all right? Love that is between romantic partners is somehow the epitome of the intellectual, intellectual exploration of self. But how does Philia afford us to view the complexity of the human experience? How does Philia betray and uphold oneself? How are we able to be our most authentic self in these relationships? How do narratives surrounding these types of relationships afford us to look at life and the world around us? And finally, I'm going to move to our character-driven plot flowchart. And so when I talk about this, I'm talking about yesterday you should have sat down and created a character or thought about someone in your life if you're writing a narrative essay, and written down as much information as possible. Today we're going to talk about the next step. So after you write down 3 times as much information that's ever going to exist on the page, or more, you're going to move into wants and fears. And so this is the next step, because so what you're doing with the 3 times as much information is essentially listening to this person's background, the experiences that they've been a part of, their life as much as you know. And what's good is that as you're writing the story, actually more of the experiences is going to show up. Because once you begin to interrogate one's experience, you can figure out what they want. So let's say a person After their first birthday, their mother gave them a whole tub of ice cream. And so now all they want in life really is ice cream. So whenever they're sad, they want ice cream. Whenever they're happy, they want ice cream. Something very, very simple like that. A fear. Maybe, you were your character was bitten by a spider at a ballpark when they were 7. And so they have an irrational fear of, not irrational because obviously it's rooted in experience, a fear of spiders for the rest of their life, right? So like these are these particular things. Now, when you are doing making the lists of wants and fears of your character, I want you to be exhaustive as possible. So write down as many as you can possibly think of. And don't discriminate. When I say don't discriminate, don't try to say, "Oh, I can't write that." Just write them down. Get as many as you can out. After you finish that, then I want you to be a bit more thoughtful. So when I say be a bit more thoughtful, I want you to think about psychologically what are some things that these people could want. One of the things I like. So when I think about Etta Mae Johnson, Etta Mae Johnson is a person whose experiences, she was a very pretty woman when she was younger, or she's very pretty now still. However, we see that Etta Mae Johnson understands that she is getting older. And so as from the excerpt that I read, the sentence that I read, I lay down with this body. And so what she fears is laying down with this body, getting up with this body, having nobody next to it, right? So maybe she fears being alone. And so if she fears being alone, she wants to, find a man. It is my belief that the only thing that makes people move, that moves people out of inertia. When I say inertia, what do I mean? I know you all took physics or some type of science. What is inertia? Give me 5 seconds. All right. Inertia is the tendency for a body at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by what type of force? Unbalanced force. Little tidbit fact about me, I was a chemistry teacher for a number of years, and a physics teacher, an environmental science teacher, and an earth science teacher, and a physical science teacher. I taught. I was a teacher in a high school. Is the point of all of these things. And so inertia, again, one more time, is a body at rest will stay at rest unless acted upon by an unbalanced force, or a body in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. And the reason I bring this up is because I think that people do not move unless they are moving towards something or they're moving away from something. And so this is gravity and magnetism, right? And so gravity pulls things toward it. Magnetism can, depending on the polarity of the things, push a thing or move a thing. And so a person will move towards a want, right? And so if I want an ice cream, I'm going to go searching for ice cream and going to go into the store to buy it. And a person will move away from a fear. If I see a spider and I've been afraid of spiders, I am going to run the other direction. Doesn't really matter what direction, just away from that particular direction. What you'll notice is that wants make us more pointed in our search, and fears push us away sporadically and wildly. So those are two possible differences, though they can be more honed or more random. Depending on the circumstance. Now, when I think about going from 3 times as much to wants and fears, I think about Harry Potter. Do you know anything about Harry Potter? And so things about Harry Potter and their background, right, is Harry Potter's parents were killed by Lord Voldemort. They were raised by their family, aunt and uncle who bullied them, and so on and so forth. And they have a scar on their forehead every time that something Voldemort it tingles up. They wear glasses. They were in the 90s. They were in the UK. These are some of the things about them. Now, moving to wants and fears, some things about complex. So when I think about being, what's the word I'm looking for? When I think about being thoughtful about what their wants and fears might be, So immediately I'm thinking, if something killed my parents, I'm gonna want to stay away from that, right? So like, Lord Voldemort is like is the most powerful, or one of the most powerful wizards in their world. And so I'm thinking like, oh my God, like stay away from them. However, when I think about other aspects of Harry's history, how Harry had been bullied by his family, right? And so now Harry has a disdain for bullies, right? And so viewing Lord Voldemort as a bully, Harry, even though his parents were murdered, his older parents, who were much more powerful than him at the time, were murdered by Lord Voldemort. He still seeks out things about Voldemort, right? And so he wants to find Voldemort, right? And so that actually it seemed a bit counterintuitive to the experiences in his life. Also, his parents were murdered. He fears being alone. So Harry actually has a complex to want to have friends, which is why we have like the close relationship between Hermione and Ron, but also how he develops really all these auxiliary relationships with these other people because he wants friends, he wants love, right? Like Sirius Black, he wants to have connections to his past life, so he is constantly seeking these things out, and it shapes his movement. Right, it means that in the first movie, book, whatever, he goes to look for the troll when everyone says stay in your room, fool. And so think about how these things are going to develop. And so your assignment for today is to investigate your character's wants and fears, write as many down as possible, and then be a bit more thoughtful. It is okay if they are contradictory. We're human. We contradict ourselves. We are a compilation of contradictory things. We contain multitudes, and it is not a fault of anything that we have and want and fear things that are contradictory to each other. It is built into the experience of life, right? We oftentimes want things that we can't have. We sometimes we fear things that are good for us, or that are healthy for us. And so it's a part of being human. And what I want you all to do is create humans with your wants and fears. And so have fun with your writing experience. I shall see you all on the morrow. So looking forward to talking to you all again. Bye bye.